Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shabnam Mehlawat from the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. This is my lecture number 18, which relates to the scientific aspect as well as the legal aspect of the ozone depleting substances, the regulation and rules of the year 2000. I will be explaining to you the background of the law, the international law first, then the background, then the concept, the rules and the amendments which have taken place over a period of time. The changes in the environmental law started with the Industrial Revolution, and several discoveries were made, changes started taking place in the environment as a result of the industrial and other chemical industry which were operating for, they were motivated by the modernization and the industrialization amongst the civilized world. Now, in the 1920s and the 30s and the 40s onwards, there was a lot of industrialization, there was a lot of use of chemicals and a lot of use of CFCs, or the miracle substances as they were called when they were discovered. These miracle substances were used in every aspect of the industry to make life a good one for the living human beings. It was felt that whatever science did was certain, whatever science did was good based on the assimilative capacity principle. So, the discovery of the CFCs in the Western world was said to be a discovery of the miracle substances, since they were said to be inert, they were said to be non-harmful at the lower end of the earth's surface, and a lot of products started being made with the help of these CFCs. These CFCs were used in everyday household articles of every person's daily lives, so that every human's life started getting dependent on them. For example, refrigeration, the air conditioners, the aerosols, the sprays and other likewise things. So, they were the miracle substances which were responsible for the industrialization, the modernization and the development of advanced countries in comparison to the third world. The Vienna Convention for Protection of the Ozone Layer is a multilateral environmental agreement which is signed in 1985 that provides a framework for international reduction in the production of chlorofluorocarbons due to their contribution to the destruction of the ozone layer, resulting in an increased threat of skin cancer and other diseases. During the 1970s, the research indicated that man-made chlorofluorocarbons cause the destruction of ozone layer in the atmosphere. So, after the industrialized period and after making use of these chemicals over a period of 50 years, they started realizing in the 1960s that it is, and then the two world wars also took place for the purpose of destruction. It was these CFCs which were used in the fighter jets, the CFCs used in the industry, in the everyday lives, that in the 1960s they discovered a ozone hole in the Antarctica region. So, from the discovery of these miracle chemicals from the 1930s to the 1970s, a lot of time went by, whereby the use of these chemicals and mainly the discarding of these chemicals in an unregulated manner and an unresponsible manner was the reason for depletion of the ozone layer. The 1970s research by various scientists and finally two scientists of the US university discovered, which were F. Sherwood Rowland and Mario J. Molina, who discovered that it is these CFCs which were responsible for the depletion of the ozone layer, and the depletion of the ozone layer meant that it would allow the harmful UVB radiation to reach the Earth's surface in its absence. So, it was during the 1970s that research indicated that man-made chlorofluorocarbons cause the destruction of the ozone layer in the atmosphere. The CFCs are stable molecules when near the Earth's surface, but the moment they move to the upper layers due to the movement of the winds or due to the natural courses of the wind, they react with the bluish life-giving layer known as the ozone layer, and they start depleting it. The scientific reasoning says that the ozone molecule or the CFC molecule, it reacts with one oxygen molecule of the ozone. It separates it from the ozone without itself getting depleted. So, an excessive process of the same can deplete a whole number of layers without that molecule itself getting depleted. This is the scientific reasoning behind the depletion of the ozone layer. They are composed of carbon, fluorine and chlorine that are prominently in products such as refrigerators. The threats associated with the reduced ozone pushed the issue to the forefront of the global climate issues also, and gained promotion through organizations such as the World Meteorological Organization and the United Nations. The Vienna Convention was agreed upon at the Vienna Conference of 1985 and entered into force in 1988. The enacting of the convention was the credit of the convention was given to the United Nations Environmental Program, where it provided a framework necessary to create regulatory measures in the form of Montreal Protocol 2. In terms of universality, it is one of the most successful treaties of all times and has been ratified by 198 states of the world. Though not binding, and it is voluntarily agreed between all countries, whether developed or not, it does not include legally binding reduction goals for the use of CFCs, the main chemical agents causing ozone depletion. The interesting aspect of this convention is that after the soft law which developed in 1972 of the Stockholm Declaration and the World Charter for Nature in 1982, this was the first hard law obligation created by a convention and which required action work actually to be taken with respect to environment or one of the aspects of environment which threatened life on earth and made the living organisms, whether it was land, whether it was air or whether it was marine life, all affected by the depletion of this layer. The first international action to focus attention on the dangers of ozone depletion in the stratosphere and its dangerous consequences in the long run on life on earth was focused in 1977, when in a meeting of 32 countries in Washington DC, a world plan on action on ozone layer with the help of United Nations Environment Program as the coordinator was adopted. As experts began their investigations, data piled up, and in 1985 in an article published in the prestigious science journal Nature by Dr. Farman pointed out that although there is an overall depletion of the ozone layer all across the world, the severe depletion has taken place over the Antarctica. This is what is called the Antarctica ozone hole. His findings were confirmed by the satellite observations and offered the first proof of severe ozone depletion and served the scientific community to take urgent remedial action in an international convention held in Vienna in 1985. This resulted in an international agreement also in 1987 on specific measures to be taken in the form of an international treaty known as the Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer. The scientific reasoning also calls for saying that earlier, prior to the discovery of the CFCs, Earth and the nature had a way of depleting the ozone layer, and it would recover itself over a period of time. This would happen due to natural reasons like volcanic eruptions, forest fires, where ozone would get depleted up to small portions, but then over a period of time it would recover on its own. The process of the use of CFCs accelerated the process at such a rate that large amounts of ozone got depleted all across the world. The science of ozone depletion. The small bluish and green planet we call home, it's a very special and unique place. We live in the only planet in our solar system and possibly in the galaxy where life is known to exist. All life exists within the thin film of air, water and soil up to 15 kilometers deep. This spherical shell of life is known as the biosphere. The biosphere can be divided into three layers: the atmosphere, the hydrosphere and the lithosphere. It is the unique attributes of the Earth's atmosphere that it allows it to be a habitable place for humans, animals, microbes and plants as we know them. The atmosphere is a mixture of gases and particles that surround our Earth, and when seen from space, the atmosphere appears as thin seam of dark blue light on the curved horizon. The atmosphere extends a few hundred kilometers above the Earth. It is made of layers that surround the Earth like the rings. However, 99% of its total mass lies in two regions within the first 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface: the troposphere and the stratosphere. It is the stratosphere which extends out beyond the troposphere to up to 50 kilometers above the Earth, and which contains the ozone layer, which is essential for protection of all life forms on Earth. Ozone meaning, ozone is a form of oxygen. It occurs in three different forms. Now, this is the scientific reasoning given to the various scientific aspects of the law which I am trying to elaborate upon. So, it is oxygen atoms, oxygen molecules and the ozone, O3. Ozone's unique physical properties allows the ozone layer to act as our planet's sunscreen, providing an invisible filter to help protect all life forms from the sun's damaging UVB radiation. Most incoming UV radiation is absorbed by the ozone or it is reflected back, and it prevents it from reaching the Earth's surface. Without this protective effect of ozone, life on Earth would not have evolved the way it has now. The ultraviolet radiation, it is one of the forms of radiant energy coming out from the sun. The sun emits a range of energy known as the electromagnetic spectrum. The three categories of UV radiation are UVA between 320 and 400 nm, UVB between 280 and 320, this one which is more important, UVC between 200 and 280 nm. Of these, UVB and C being highly energetic and are dangerous to life on Earth, UVA being less energetic, it is not dangerous. Unfortunately, UVC is absorbed strongly by oxygen and also by ozone in the upper atmosphere. UV is also absorbed by the ozone layer in the stratosphere, and only 2 to 3% of it reaches the Earth's surface. The ozone layer, therefore, is highly beneficial to the plant and animal life on Earth in filtering out the dangerous part of the sun's radiation and allowing only the beneficial part to reach the Earth's surface. Any disturbance or depletion of this layer would result in an increase of the UVB and the UVC radiation reaching the Earth's surface, leading to dangerous consequences. Ozone depletion. Ozone depletion occurs when the natural balance between the production and destruction of the stratospheric ozone is tipped in favor of destruction. Although the natural phenomena can cause temporary ozone loss, chlorine and bromine released from the synthetic compounds is now accepted as the main cause of a net loss of stratospheric ozone in many parts of the world since 1980. There is strong evidence that global ozone depletion is occurring. The evidence is in the observations of the Antarctica ozone hole and the atmospheric records indicating seasonal decline in the ozone depletion levels. The ozone hole, it refers to a large and rapid decrease in the abundance of whole ozone molecules, not the complete absence of them. The Antarctica ozone hole occurred during the southern spring between September and November. It was first reported by a British Antarctica survey team in May 1985. This team found that the period between September and mid-November, ozone concentrations over Haley Bay, Antarctica had declined 40% from levels during 1960. Severe depletion had been occurring since the late 1970s. A recent assessment made by a panel of United Nations Environmental Programme experts have given detailed accounts of the impact of ozone depletion on human health, animals, plants, microorganisms, materials and air quality. The alternatives to the CFCs. During the last few years, research has yielded a number of substitutes which can be used as replacement to currently used CFCs, halogens, CTCs and the methyl chloroform, which are dangerous in nature. Essentials of the treaty. Now, the provisions of the Vienna Convention on Depletion of the Ozone Layer in 1985, they include sharing research and information of the ozone layer for understanding the atmospheric issues, build laws, frame policies for an effective implementation process within the domestic domains of each country. It also led to the formation of an intergovernmental panel of experts as the meeting of ozone research managers took place, who assess the research and produce reports. They assess the data to measure the whatever is required for ozone protection, and they help in making decisions for the same. Currently, the COP meet takes place every 3 years and coordinates with the timing of a similar meeting rendered under the Montreal Protocol. The Ozone Secretariat functions as an administrator of the COP meetings and the Montreal meeting of the parties and open-ended working groups that facilitate functions under the convention. A multilateral fund exists to aid the developing nations' transition from ozone depleting chemicals using guidelines under the convention and administered by the Multilateral Fund Secretariat. The fund has aided thousands of projects in nearly 150 countries, preventing the use of roughly 250,000 tons of ozone depleting substances. Now, the process was not an easy one when the Vienna Convention on Depletion of the Ozone Layer was formulated, for it was only the advanced countries who came together to join the convention, and that is the reason that in 1988 that the convention came into force. It was this reason that it was the countries which were developing after the 1970s, they were developing in a very haphazard manner, since they did not have the finances and the technology to do the same. So, they would first bring out industry, lead to the working of that industry, take out products and start making use of those products. But the developed world began to say that the working of these countries is not in accordance with or conformity with the Vienna Convention, and they need to switch over to environmental friendly chemicals. The countries like India, Brazil and China did not want to be a part of this convention because they said they did not have the finances, and based on the principles of international law, it was the polluter who should be made to pay compensation. That is, based on the fact that if a person has created pollution, he shall be responsible for the pollution, and it is he who shall pay compensation not only for the damages, but also for the restitution of environment or replenishing the earth back with the resources which it has taken away. So, the treaty was not an easy one in making the third world or the developing world to conform to the principles as well as the working of the convention. Then an agreement was reached, and they reached out to the developing countries to join in as a party based on that they would be providing the finances and they would be providing the technology to help their industrial development switch over to more user friendly CFCs. And it was on this basis that most of the countries agreed. This aspect of the convention also divided the world between the developed, the developing and the underdeveloped. After the 1990s, with the disintegration of the USSR, there were 4 categories which were found in the next convention, which were developed countries with economies in transition, the developing countries and the least developed countries. But under this convention, it was only the 3 categories which were brought out, which were the developed, the developing and the underdeveloped. This treaty brought the hard law work into action at the international arena. It brought about a financial mechanism and a transfer of technology concept. It asked not only for taking action, but also for monitoring the activities and reporting wherever a country receives funds for projects to switch over to environment friendly technologies. So, as a result, during that time, a lot of illegal activities started for the use of CFCs, as CFCs available were of a lesser value and the new technology required use of chemicals which were of a higher value. Now, this in our country, they trained several custom officers to deal with the problems, but they said it was not enough to deal with the entire smuggling process. It was then the action was taken that to reduce the price of the environmental friendly chemicals to a lower extent and to make the use of those CFCs which are being illegally done at a higher value. And if a company found to be making use of the old CFCs, would have to pay a high penalty for making use of the same. After those chemicals were available at lower prices, the companies and the economies of the different countries agreed to switching over to environmental friendly chemicals. The various agencies which were responsible for the finances were the UNEP, the UNDP, the World Bank, the Multilateral Fund and the Global Environment Facility as of today. This treaty applied the polluter pays principle to show the gap between the rich and the poor, to show the gap between the developed and the developing world, to give finances as compensation to those countries which were affected by their activities and to help them to bring into a more environment friendly development. So, there was a consensus between the various countries based on the polluter pays principle. It also talked about the equity principle, which says that the gap between the rich and the poor should be reduced, and they sought to reduce this gap by providing finances and technology for development, asking these countries to make use of the same, and so that they would develop in a similar manner and they would come at par with the developed world. The scientific research was forming an important aspect of this treaty. It asked for creating of awareness between the people through various means for leading, which would help them be aware of the depletion of the ozone layer. The chemicals which were dealt under this treaty are exempted from the Convention on Climate Change. The international law, as I stated, it was the Vienna Convention, followed by the Montreal Protocol. The Montreal Protocol set the pace for elimination of ozone depleting substances by changing the production and consumption patterns of the CFCs in the industrial use. So, the plan was firstly to reduce the production, then slowly to reduce the consumption and then identify dates by which they would absolutely be phased out. The changeover cost was very high, so it needed a financial mechanism and a change of technology to be adopted in the industrial use, specifically by the developing countries or the Article 5 countries as they were known under the convention, as they were referred to. This meant changes in the production and consumption patterns of the use of CFCs and other elements responsible for depletion of the ozone layer. An infrastructure was adopted to deal with every aspect, and not only to deal with these patterns, but also the substances were never to be used in the for the protection of the ozone layer. It places an absolute ban on those substances which are reduced by production and consumption, and it places emphasis on those chemicals which are environment friendly. Now, coming down to the features of the Montreal Protocol 1987. This was the first action work protocol Vienna Convention was like a preamble drafting out the guidelines for protection of the ozone layer. Montreal Protocol was the action work which required action to be taken with respect to the ozone depleting substances. So, it is an international agreement designated to protect the Earth's fragile ozone layer by reducing the production and consumption of products that were responsible for its depletion. These products are known as the ozone depleting substances. The original protocol was agreed on 16 September 1987 and it was brought into force on 1st January 1989. And since then it has undergone 8 revisions, amendments and adjustments. What's more, the protocol is a very first international environmental agreement to achieve endorsement from every country in the world. Thanks to the success of the protocol, the whole of the ozone layer is closing up. These studies were revealed in the year 2007 and 8 that the ozone layer had started recovering itself over the polar regions and it was coming back to its original form. But as of today, again reports are being made out that the ozone layer has restarted depletion because of the climate change conditions. This protocol includes a unique adjustment provision that enables the parties to protocol to act quickly to new scientific information and accelerate the reductions required on chemicals already covered by the protocol. The adjustments are automatically applicable to all countries that endorse the protocol, which means you have to be a signatory to the protocol as a party to the protocol, and over a period of time you need to be ratifying the same for undertaking the decisions which are taken under the Montreal Protocol. So, it requires signatures, it requires ratification and it requires an updation every 3 or 4 years, whatever the time period as prescribed under the protocol. The parties to the protocol have amended the protocol to control new chemicals as they are discovered and create means to provide funding to the developing countries so that they could comply with the protocol. The parties meet annually to make a variety of decisions aimed at ensuring the implementation of this legal agreement and is continued and effective. So, this is where we have the ozone rules. In India, we have the Environmental Protection Act 1986 as stated by me in my previous lecture. Under section 6 and under 25 of the Environmental Protection Act, the provisions are made whereby rules, regulations, targets and the fixing of areas may be done under the Environmental Protection Act along with the creation of rules by the government, and the rules are such that it requires monitoring and a time to time assessment of the situation wherever certain environmentally degrading activities are taking place. So, the rules which are covered under the Indian aspect, they are taking the Montreal Protocol as its basis and it regulates the ozone depleting substances in India. The rules 2000, these rules were framed under the Environmental Protection Act. They are framed to regulate the production, consumption of ozone depleting substances, the export and import, regulation of sale and purchase, the use, the prohibition of new investments, regulation of import, export and sale of products containing ozone depleting substances, the reclamation and destruction of ODS, regulation on manufacturing, import and export of compressors and likewise other equipment. It has a procedure for registration, cancellation and appeal against orders and monitors and reports the requirements of the ozone depleting facilities, and records are to be maintained by the inspectors for production, consumption, export, import, reclamation, destruction, manufacturing and those who receive the financial assistance from the International Monetary Fund or other organizations for various projects in asking them from exemption from payment of duties. The government notification, the rules were drafted in 1999, but the notification came out in the year 2000. So, they are known as the Ozone Depleting Substances Rules year 2000, which was notified in the Official Gazette, and they were invited private persons who are affected by the activity to place an application for objections within a period of 45 days from the date on which the copies of the Gazette were made available to the public. The basis of enactment and implementation of the rules, this is as I previously stated, it is conferred under section 6, 8 and 25 of the Environmental Protection Act, which in my previous lecture on noise rules I have already elaborated on these provisions, which make the basis for creating rules, monitoring and conducting all activities with proper forms and procedures to be carried out. The rules are called the Ozone Depleting Substances Regulation and Control Rules 2000, and they had come into force. Defining the various terms under the Act. The Act means the Environmental Protection Act 1986. Authority means an authority mentioned under columns 4 and 6 of Schedule 5. Base level means the quantity of ozone depleting substances produced or consumed as the case may be in the year or average of the years listed in column 3 of Schedule 2 and Schedule 3. Consumption means the amount of substance produced in India in addition to the amount imported less than the amount exported. So, you have to deduct the amounts according to the import and the exports which are calculated. So, the calculated level of production, sale, import or export as the case may be means the level determined by multiplying the quantity of ozone depleting substances by its ozone depleting potential as mentioned in Schedule 1. The calculated level of consumption is determined by adding together calculated levels of production and imports and subtracting the calculated level of exports. Group means collection of one or more ozone depleting substances as specified in Schedule 1. Consumption means, now again a very important definition, it means the amount of that substance which is produced in India in addition to the amount imported less than the amount exported. The calculated levels of production, sale, import or export as the case may be means level determined by multiplying the quantity of ODS by its ODS potential in Schedule 1. Calculated level of consumption is adding together calculated levels of production and imports and subtracting the calculated level of exports. Group means collection of one or more ozone depletion groups. Manufacture is any process or part of a process making, altering, finishing, packaging, labeling, blending or otherwise treating or any ODS substance with a view to sell, distribute or use, but does not include the repacking or breaking up of the ODS in the ordinary course of retail business. And in this process in which a preparation containing ODS is formulated. Ozone depleting substance. Now, again a very important definition. This substance is referred to in column 2 of Schedule 1, whether by existing in itself or in a mixture, excluding any substance or mixture which is in a manufactured product other than a container used for transportation or storage of such substance. Parties means the text otherwise indicate parties to the protocol. The pre-shipment applications, these are treatments applied directly preceding and in relation to export to meet the phytosanitary or sanitary requirements of the importing country or existing phytosanitary or sanitary requirements of the exporting country. Production is manufacture of an ODS from any raw material or feedstock chemicals, but does not include the manufacture of a substance that is used and entirely consumed in the manufacture of other chemicals, quantities which are produced incidentally in the manufacture of other chemicals, quantities which are recycled or reused and quantities which are destroyed by technologies to be specified by the central government. The protocol is the Montreal Protocol. Quarantine applications with respect to Group 8 of Schedule 1 ODS are treatment to prevent the introduction, establishment or other spread of quarantine pests including diseases to ensure their controls as specified by the central government. And recovery means collection and storage of ODS from machinery, equipment or containment vessel during servicing or prior to disposal. Reclamation means reprocessing and upgrading of a recovered ODS substance through such methods as filtering, drying, distillation or chemical treatment in order to restore the substance to a specified standard of performance, and schedule is what is annexed to the rules, forms a part of the schedule. Section 3 talks about regulating the production and consumption of ozone depleting substances, and it says no person shall produce. Now, after being a signatory to the Montreal Protocol, we have agreed to all aspects of the protocol, which means the production needs to be minimized, which will again be notified in the official gazette. The consumption also needs to be reduced slowly, and the dates are set for the reduction of production, the reduction of consumption, and the date when they would be absolutely phased out. It was the year 2007 to 2009 that India phased out almost all CFCs existing in our country, except for a few essential uses or where the target dates were at a later date. So, this means no person shall produce or cause to be produced any ODS after the date which has been specified, unless he is registered with an authority, and the 12-month period commencing on the date, and in which 12th month period he shall produce or cause to be produced any group of ODS in excess of the corresponding percentage of his calculated base level of production. So, which means if it goes beyond his base level, it needs to be notified, his activity needs to be registered. The calculated level of consumption of substance as a percentage of in base years does not exceed the number specified in Schedule 2. No person shall produce or cause to be produced substances which are specified in Group 1 and Group 2 in column 4 of Schedule 1 during the period of 1st August 2002 till 1st January 2010 in excess of the quantity which is specified, and it shall not exceed the number which is specified. A person receiving a financial assistance from the multilateral fund in accordance with provisions of section 10 and 10A of the Montreal Protocol. The central government is a party for gradual reduction of production of the ODS specified in Group 1 and 2 in the column 4 of Schedule 1, and they shall limit the production as specified from the said dates for each year of the schedule as the agreement is approved by the executive committee of the multilateral fund. In order to implement the agreement, the central government shall introduce implemental modalities such as the quota system for producing CFCs, and non-compliance of such modalities shall result in consequential penalties in the agreement. Prohibition on the export to or import from countries. No person shall import or export to any country which is not specified in Schedule 6 of any ozone depleting substance after the commencement of these rules, which means only the parties who were party to the protocol would agree to for exports and imports of various products from one country to another. If the country is not a party to the Montreal Protocol, the trade between the two countries is restricted or barred in most of the cases. Ozone depleting substances are to be exported or imported from countries specified in Schedule 6 under a license. So, no country, no person shall import or export from any country unless he obtains a license. No license will be issued by the authority till it is satisfied that he has not caused the calculate level of consumption of the ODS substance, except for Group 1 and Group 2 of column 4 of Schedule 1, and for a 12-month period corresponding to the calculate consumption in the base years, which increases to column 5 of Schedule 2. So, in other words, he should not excess the limits which are prescribed by the government under the rules and regulations, and he shall also not be granted the license to do the same. If a license has been issued, no license, firstly the provisions say no license will be issued until and unless he does the same, and if a license is issued and he goes beyond the limits which are prescribed, his license can be cancelled. The calculated level of consumption and the calculated base level of production for India as a whole for each group of ODS shall be notified by the central government. The regulation of sale of ODS. Now, the substances which are making use of the ODS and the sale of substances require regulatory measures. No person shall himself or by any other person on his behalf sell, stock or exhibit for sale or distribute any ODS substances unless he has registered with the authority of the schedule. He shall sell the ODS for activities specified in column 2 of the schedule, and the person engaged in that activity has got himself registered with the authority, and even a declaration in accordance with the rules that the person is selling has verified the particulars of the registration given under the declaration, and there has to be a certificate of registration. The proviso says that no person or enterprise shall sell, stock, distribute or exhibit or cause to be sold, stock, distribute or exhibit any ODS for activities which are specified in column 2. He shall himself or on his behalf or enterprise sell, stock or exhibit for sale or distribute any ODS who has not informed the central government, or that enterprise shall not use that substance from the date on which it has been specified. The central government shall notify the list of persons, the ODS substances and the dates informed under sub rule 2. Then comes the purchase of ODS substances. Now, purchase was initially a big problem because of the switch over of the economies. There was illegal transactions of purchasing ODS substances, but over a period of time these reduced, and they were shown to be reduced in the industry because the use of these barred ODS was so high that the industry could not get profits out of the end product which would be produced with that ODS. Section 7 says a person who himself or on his behalf is making stock or use of the ODS substances specified, he has to give a declaration to the seller of the substance which are specified under serial number 4 of schedule 5. Regulation on the ODS. A person who engages in the ODS substances, he shall be registered with the authority. He shall not engage in any activity unless the products are labeled by his activity, and he shall engage in that activity after the date which has been specified in the schedule. If a date specifies that a certain product needs to be banned or not to be made use of, then he shall also obtain the certificate for the same before he sells any product or commodity. Labeling and financial assistance. No person shall engage in any activity specified in column 2 of schedule 4 without using labels indicating the absence of use of ODS. A person having received financial and technical assistance from the multilateral fund under article 10 and 10A of the Montreal Protocol, the central government will help bring out the phasing out of the ozone depleting substances which has been specified by that enterprise, and the person shall not engage further by making use of those ODS substances which are banned. After the date of completion of conversion work or signing of handing over the protocol or the submission of completion of report will be sent from switch over of the ozone depleting technology to the non-ozone depleting technology, and the same shall be registered with the authority which has been specifically created on this behalf. In India, an ozone cell has been set up under the Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change. Earlier, it was only set up as an independent cell. Later on, it came under the Ministry of Environment and Forests. So, any person who has received these funds under 10 or 10A, he shall replace his equipment which he has received because of the fund and not make use of the ozone depleting technology which he had been previously using. It should be destroyed, dismantled, rendered unusable, and should be used after the date of completion of the projects and will be registered with the specified authority. Prohibition on new investments with ozone depleting substances. After a technology or after a substance has been banned up till a particular date, no new activity and the same persons who had already received funds will not make use or will not invest in new ODS substances which are environmentally degrading. So, the section 9 places a prohibition on new investments with ozone depleting substances. It says, no person shall establish, expand or cause to be established or expanded any manufacturing facility for production of any ODS substance. No person shall establish or expand or cause to be established or expanding with a view to manufacturing products which contain the ozone depleting substances, and those people who have received funds as technical assistance from the multilateral fund of the Montreal Protocol, then they shall not receive, they shall show their declaration of work, and after the declaration and registration has been made, they will not indulge in new activities which will either bring in the form of equipment or in the form of an end product for the use of that ozone depleting substance. Regulation of import, export and sale of products made with or containing ozone depleting substances, like we had the use of sprays and aerosols before the Vienna Convention. Now, those products are banned. So, there is a regulation on the importing, exporting and sale of such products after such dates, and then the identified groups of chemicals which are identified under the various schedules, those are taken into account while regulating the trade aspects of the ozone depleting substances or the products and the machinery. So, no person shall import or cause to be exported the ozone depleting substances unless he obtains a license first, and then he shall not import or cause to be imported any product which are specified or which contain the ODS substances as listed in group 1, 2 or 3 of the schedule from the date of commencement of the amendment of ozone depleting substances rules 2007. So, the ozone rules were amended in the year 2007, which says it shall not contain any ozone depleting substances and shall carry a label. All labeling aspects of finished products and the packaging products now contain labels showing the ingredients and showing the handling of special products in case it requires to be done. No person or enterprise shall cause export or cause to be exported a product which does not carry a label. So, a label is mandatory for trade to take place, and no person shall either himself or any other person or enterprise sell, stock or exhibit for sale or distribute any product resulting out of the activities or provide services specified under schedule 4 using ODS substances after the date which has been specified in the schedule. The regulation on reclamation and destruction of ODS and manufacture of compressors. So, where compressors are there, the person needs to, again it is the process is repeated in itself. They first need to be registered, and he shall not destroy or cause to be destroyed any ozone depleting substances unless he is registered with the said authority. He shall not manufacture, import, export compressors after the date which has been specified under the schedule. The registration, cancellation and appeal. The procedure for registration and conditions of registration under various provisions of these laws are as specified in schedule 9, which says the registering authority shall not register if it is not satisfied that the procedure for registration or conditions of registrations are not fulfilled, if they are satisfied that the conditions of registration have been violated, if they are satisfied after giving the person an opportunity of being heard that the orders shall be made in writing. An appeal shall lie within 30 days from the communication of such an order of the person. Every application for renewal or registration of shall be disposed of within 60 days from the receipt of the application, and under schedule 5 they shall decide the issue of cancellation of registration granted unless these rules within 60 days from the date of service show cause notice as to why it should be given to the registration holder. So, now this is a part of the procedural aspect as to when can an authority cancel or not allow, and when it can allow a person to carry on his activity. The person who is aggrieved by the orders of the authority can go into appeal for letting his case be heard again. Monitoring and reporting. The government shall also monitor and report of the various activities which are being carried on in our country. So, every person who produces the imports, exports or sells any ODS need to maintain records, file reports in the manner which is specified. Every person who is stocking or establishing ozone depleting substances for use in activities which are specified shall maintain records and file reports. Who has received technical or financial assistance shall do the same, or who has received a concession or exemption from payment of duties from the central government, he shall again maintain records and file reports. Every person who has a facility to reclaim an ODS shall maintain records and file reports. Every person who has a facility to destroy the ODS shall again maintain records and file reports. And every person who manufactures, imports, exports or sells compressors maintain records and file reports. So, nothing contained in these rules shall apply to applications or circumstances specified in Schedule 8. The annexes to these rules. Part 1 talks about the list of ozone depleting substances. What we have been talking before under the various rules. Now, the rule numbers are given here and the list of ozone depleting substances are given in under this. So, the part 1 talks about the list and it gives an enumerative list of the ODS and it is applicable under these provisions of the rules. So, part 2 talks about regulation on production and consumption of ODS. Part 3 talks about regulation on consumption of group 1 and group 3 of the ODS. Part 4 talks about regulation on consumption of ODS on end use basis. Part 5 gives a list of authorities, their functions and last date for registration. Part 6 talks about the list of countries which are party to the Montreal Protocol for trade to take place. Part 7 talks about regulation on import of products containing the ODS. Part 8 talks about the exemptions which are given to certain ODS and the use of those ODS in certain systems. Part 9 talks about the procedure of registration and conditions of registration along with the forms. Part 10 talks about records to be maintained, reports to be submitted and production of records whenever they are required. Part 11 talks about the forms which are utilized for in case a person wishes to show that there is a production of any item with the use of ODS, the consumption, the purchase and other information. And part 12 talks about the end use declaration. A person will purchasing the ODS will produce a copy of certificate of registration so issued. India has developed a country program in 1993 for the phase out of the ODS in accordance with the National Industrial Development Strategy by accessing funds from the financial mechanism of the Montreal Protocol. The country program was updated in the year 2006. India has proactively phased out the production and consumption of CFCs except the use in metered dose inhalers used for the treatment of asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease ailments from 1st August 2008. Subsequently, the use of CFCs in MDIs has been phased out from December 2012. India has completely phased out the production consumption of the CTC and halons as of 1st January 2010. So, India is one of the leading countries which has conformed to the timelines of the Montreal Protocol and is successful in phasing out most of the ODS substances according to the deadlines which had been given. The essential uses are continuing and the dates which have been prescribed are up till 2030 and 2050 for only the small essential uses, whereby the other uses are completely phased out and their use is no longer allowed as an illegal activity. The Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change and the Ozone Cell. The Government of India has entrusted the work relating to the ozone layer protection and implementation of the Montreal Protocol to the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. It has established an empowered steering committee chaired by the Secretary, which is supported by two standing committees, that is the Technology and the Financial Standing Committee and the Standing Committee on Monitoring. The overall responsibility for implementation of the Montreal Protocol provisions, review of various policies including implementation options, project approvals and monitoring. It has also set up an ozone cell as the National Ozone Unit to render necessary services for effective and timely implementation of the Montreal Protocol and its ODS phase out program in India. The ozone cell, it is engaged in the phase out of production and consumption of next category of chemicals, the HCFCs, with an accelerated phase out schedule as per the Montreal Protocol. The ozone cell, in association with the implementing agencies and in close cooperation with the stakeholders in the country, has been implementing the following projects, which is accelerated CFC production sector phase out project, National CTC phase out plan, National strategy for transition to non-CFCs MDIs and plan for phase out of CFCs in the manufacture of pharmaceutical MDIs, HCFC phase out management plan stage 1, foam manufacturing sector, system houses, refrigeration and air conditioners services sector, HCFC phase out management plan stage 2. Now, I come down to the end of my chapter, which is the ozone depleting substances, which have changed over a period of time since its discovery in the 1930s to the current date to our country, helping achieving the targets which have been brought about by the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol and the domestic law and policy in our country. However, the Convention on Climate Change is the one which is responsible now for all other atmospheric problems which are arising, because in comparison to the ozone depletion convention, it is a major fallout over a period of 20 to 30 years. Action plan has been formulated under the climate change convention only after the Paris Agreement, that certain measures have been taken out, and the witnessing of different events across the world go to show that climate change is changing at a very fast pace, having its impact on the ozone layer, which is leading to the ultimate destruction in our planet. Thank you.
Hello, I am Shikha Dikshit. I teach psychology and I am with the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Kanpur. Today I am going to talk about what is social cognition. Social cognition is a research area in psychology which explicates the various cognitive processes that people employ to understand the social world. So, essentially it is about sense making of the social world, which involves understanding other people as well as understanding oneself. Understanding others requires understanding their traits, their internal tendencies, their contextual aspects, motives, feelings, emotions, etc. So, as we can see, this is a very complex process and requires a massive amount of information processing. Even for small decisions, for simple decisions, people have to process a large amount of information. The main perspective or the approach which is used in social cognition is obviously the cognitive approach, and which is the study of mental structures and processes. The main paradigm which is used is the information processing paradigm. As far as the range of topics in social cognition is concerned, the range is very wide, from individual level sense making to collective sense making. As far as views of cognitive sense making are concerned, there are three major dominant views in social cognition: the naive scientist view, the cognitive miser view, and the motivated tactician view. The naive scientist view emerged from research done in causal attribution, and this refers to detailed and systematic processing of information and sense making in the social world. However, it is not always possible to make detailed engage in detailed cognitive processing, and hence people act as cognitive misers in many situations. So, whenever there is lack of time and cognitive effort is less, then people involve in using certain strategies which are functional, yet they are like mental shortcuts. So, this is the cognitive miser approach. However, the question that comes to the fore is that which one of the two strategies is more important? The answer is provided by the motivated tactician view, and according to this view, people can either use the knife scientist approach or the cognitive miser approach as and when required, and they can switch over between the two approaches when required. So, these are the three major views which are utilized to understand cognitive sense making. The topics that social cognition covers ranges from cognitive social cognition to social cognition. So, topics such as causal attribution, understanding of attitudes, social schemas, unconscious cognition about social situations, the use of mental shortcuts or heuristics in decision making, social identity and stereotyping processes are some of the topics. In addition to this, a large number of social cognitive psychologists also understand collective sense making in terms of social representations.